Okay, thank you. All right. So good on that. There is a portion of your homework you'll have to do that. So we want to make sure we know how. Okay. The next section at the top of page 81, we want to go the opposite direction. We've got an improper fraction here, and we want to now make the mixed number. Okay? So let's start with number 1. 17 seconds. Okay? So number 1 here, 17 seconds is going to be equal to, well, we decide how many seconds or 2's go into, how many of the denominator go into the numerator. So how many times does 2 go into 17? 8 times. So 8 is going to be our whole number out front, right? So when we take 8 times 2, it's 16. How many are left over to get to 17? 1, right? So it's 1 over the same denominator. So 8 and 1/2 is our mixed number. We can always check it, right? Go the opposite way. Go 2 times 8 is 16 plus 1 is 17. Okay?
When you're looking at 2, anything, if it's odd, it's going to be 1/2. If it's even, it's going to be a whole
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Mm-hmm.
It's easier to know this which.
Yeah, the twos become easy. Let's do number 3 here, 11/8. Okay? Looking at the denominator is smaller than the numerator, how many times can we get 8 evenly into 11? 1 time, right? And when we do that, how many are left over to get to 11? 3. Yeah, so that goes in the top on the numerator, divided by, we keep the same denominator, 8 here. Checking again, 8 times 1 is 8, plus 3 is 11. Good. Gosh, you guys, you must be looking for, like, what is our homework? We got to get going on this. This is good stuff. Can't wait, right? Okay. All right. The next section, section C here. Write in lowest terms. Let's do 13 first. I know that seems kind of weird. Let's do 13 first. So 13 is 15/36. So our factors of 15 here are what? Probably 3 and 5, right? Okay. 36, what do you think they might be? You could use 6 and 6, right? Is there anything that in the combination of one of these numbers, maybe a 3 and a 12? Yeah, I would go there. A 3 and a 12. Okay, so 3 is our common one here. So to get this in lowest terms, we're going to divide the top by 3 and the bottom by 3, right? So we're going to go divided by 3 on the top. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. 36 divided by 3 is 12, right? Okay? If we happen to hit the highest common factor or the largest common factor, then we do this in one step. If we don't, then we just do a couple extra steps, right? And that's fine. We keep doing it. So any questions about lowest terms? Let's do one with a whole number in it, though. Okay? So if we look at number 9 here, we have a choice. We can either put it in an improper fraction or we can deal with it as a mixed number. Okay? Now what you want to do is you want to kind of look at the end here. I can see in there that 3 is going to be our largest common factor, right? So we can leave the 4 out front, and then we can just deal with the 3 over 12. So here, 3 goes into 3 how many times? 1. And 3 goes into 12 4 times. So 4 1/4 here in lowest terms. Does that make sense to everybody? Are you bored? All right, I'm seeing nods. Okay. Really kind of on that same subject, here's another section of problems that you'll have to do for your homework. Section D here on page 81. We want to find the equivalent fraction here. Okay? So starting with number 1, I'm going to put my paper in. Starting with number 1 here, we have 7/8 is equal to how many 16ths? I want to fill in the number on top here, right? So I look on the bottom, 8 to 16. What do I need to do here? What do I need to multiply to get to 16 on the bottom?
2.
Times 2, right? So I'm going to do that same thing on the top. Times 2 on the top. So 7 times 2 is 14 on top. So it's an equivalent fraction. 14/16 is the same as 7/8, right? It's kind of like not being in lowest terms. You start with lowest terms and you multiply by something to get it in non-lowest terms. Let's do number 3 here. 1/8 1/8 is equal to how many 64ths? So on the bottom here, 8 times what equals 64th? 8, right? Yeah. So I'm going to do that same multiplication on the top. 1 times 8 is 8. So 8 64ths is equivalent to 1/8. Right? Ooh, let's do a mixed number. Let's do number 11 down here. This is where you are going to want to put that mixed number into its improper fraction before doing the equivalent fraction. So for number 11 here, I'm going to start with 2 5/8 is equal to, we don't know, 16ths, right? Something over 16ths. So my first step is going to be putting this into an improper fraction. So 2 times 8 is 16, plus 5 is 21. So 21/8 is going to be equal to, not sure how many 16ths, right? Now we can do that same procedure as we did on the first ones. So 8 times what equals 16? 2, right? And then, so then we would take 21 times 2 is 42 16ths. Okay? That's what you would be looking for that equivalent fraction. All right. Any questions on that? Feel comfortable-ish? Okay. Now, like I said, as we're going through this, if you feel that you need extra reinforcement, outside of class, those ModuMath models are really good. Okay, so make sure that if you do need that reinforcement, take a look at those, you know, as you're doing your homework, or back at the examples in the book here. They walk through them step by step as well, or review the video. Can't imagine not wanting to do this again. Okay, maybe not. All right, which is larger? The last section here on page 81. Which is larger? Let's just do number 4, okay? And let's do our calculator method. So 3/4 is 0.75, right? We probably know that one right away. So 0.75 is that number. And then 13 divided by 16ths, if we don't know that, oh, it's 0.1 or 0.813-ish. So it looks like 13/16 is going to be the winner there. Okay? So, what was that?
12/16.
Oh, well, it might not be. Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then you can say it's larger. Yep. There you go.
The first thing I saw.
Go ahead. Okay, so that's the first section on fractions, kind of familiarizing ourselves with the notation and how it works. The next section here is going to be on multiplication of fractions. Easy peasy. It's actually that equivalent fraction business we were just looking at. It's really straightforward. Multiplication is probably the easiest thing to do in fractions. All we do is when we want to multiply 1/2 times 1/3, we multiply across the top and we multiply across the bottom. So in this case, 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 3 is 6. So multiplying 1/2 times 1/3 gives us 1/6. Okay? In the example below, example number 1, multiply 5/6 times 2/3. We take 5 times 2 equals 10. 6 times 3 on the bottom equals 18. So 10/18. Now, you'll notice this is not in lowest terms. So after you get your final product here, you want to reduce this down to lowest terms. You'll notice that we can divide the top and the bottom by 2 evenly, right? So we can divide the top by 2 to get 5, and we can divide the bottom by 2 to get 9. So your lowest terms here would be 5/9, okay, when we multiply that together. Okay, so again, always remembering to put it in lowest terms. Now, what happens when we multiply, if we have a whole number when we multiply? So let's say we have 6 times 1/8, okay? Now, we don't write a whole number in fraction form, but its equivalent fraction form is as we see it down here, 6/1. You probably remember that, right, from the past. So that's all you do. You take 6/1 times 1/8, multiply across the top, divide by the bottom. So they already did lowest terms. They did some canceling in the process here. But if we would multiply across the top, we would get 6 over 8, right? It's not in lowest terms. If we recognize that, we would then say, okay, we can divide both of these by 2. So 2 divided by, or I'm sorry, 6 divided by 2 would be our 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. What they're doing inside of this multiplication right here is they're recognizing things that cancel top and bottom. If you want to do that there, that's fine. I personally like to do it at the end, do my lowest terms. So whether you do it inside in the math here, or if you do it after the fact, I don't mind. It's one or the other, just making sure that your final answer is in lowest terms. Okay? So let's get some practice. On the bottom of page 84, in this case, they're talking about the words. Sometimes in word problems, they're going to use the verbiage of where you want to know what is 7/8 of 2/3. It's a multiplication when we see that. So all of these are multiplying. I'm just going to put an X over the word of wherever we see of. This is a multiplication of those two. Okay? So when we look here, multiplying 7/8 times 2/3, again, we multiply across the top, we would get 14, right? And multiplying across the bottom, we would get 8 times 3 is, oops, you know what, I think I'm gonna put the 14 on the top, the 24 on the bottom. I believe that's what they're looking for there, using that. Now, is this in lowest terms? No. I can put 2 into each one of these, right? So in lowest terms, I would have 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 24 divided by 2 is 12. So my answer would be 7/12. Okay? Let's do another one. We'll do the one immediately below here. 3 over 2 times 2 over 3. So multiplying across the top, we're going to get 6. Multiplying across the bottom, we're going to get 6. Oh, well, that's weird. What does that reduce to? The whole number 1. Exactly. 6 over 6 is the whole number 1. It means that I have something that's divided into 6 equal 6 equal parts, and I'm using all 6 of them. That's 1, right? So whenever we see a number in the numerator and the same number in the denominator, that's the number 1. Okay? So it's basically the top divided by the bottom. 6 divided by 6 is 1. Let's look at E here. E is that example that we saw earlier. We're multiplying a whole number times a fraction. Remember, we can put that whole number in fraction form by putting it over 1. So this means that we take the top numbers, so the 4 times the 7 is 28, over 1 times 8, over 8. Okay? Now, this is an improper fraction, isn't it? So I want to put it in its mixed number form. So 8, how many times does it go into 28?
4.
I think 3 times, right? 3 times. So I'm going to write this next to it. 3 times, right? And 3 times 8 is 24, right? With how many left over to get to 28?
4.
4, right? 4 plus 4 is 20, or 4 plus 24 is 28 over 8. Now, is 3 and 4/8 in lowest terms?
No.
No. So I would go 3, and how can I get 4 over 8 in lowest terms? What's a common factor between 4 and 8? 4, right? 2 is one of them, but we actually can go to the next one, 4, right? So if I take 4 divided by 4, what do I get? If I take 8 divided by 4, what do I get? 2. And we know that 4/8 is also a half, so it reduces to 3.5.
Reducing it 28 over 8.
Now, can you check these answers on your calculator? Yes, you can, right? What you can do is you can take and you can multiply this together. So I'm going to take 4 times 7 over 8 is 0.875, right? And I get 3.5, which is 3.5. So you can check these, okay, if you wanted to on the calculator to be sure that you're getting the right number. And know that for your homework, the odds answers are all in the back. So you'll know if you're on the right track by looking there as well. All right. Let's see. On page 86, some exercises here of multiplying fractions together, okay? So let's do a couple of these practice-wise and be sure that we understand the process. Okay? So let's do number 1. Okay? I have 1/2 times 1/4. Okay? Now they don't always leave a lot of room here, so that's why I'm putting it on the piece of paper here. So multiplying fractions again, easiest thing to do. We're going to multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. Okay? So 1 times 1 for my numerator is going to be 1. 2 times 4 for my denominator is 8. So 1/2 times 1/4 is 1/8. So if I go in here and I say, okay, 1/2's equivalent is 0.5 times 0.25 for 1/4, sure enough, I get 0.125, which I know to be 1/8 of an inch. Okay? Or 1/8, not necessarily an inch. Let's do number 3. Okay? 4/5 times 1/6. Again, multiplying across the top for the numerator. 4 times 1 is 4. 5 times 6 is 30. Now, we're not in lowest terms here, are we? We can divide 2 into each one of these. So if I take 2 into 4, so I get 2. 2 into 30 is 15. So 2/15 is in its lowest terms, right? Piece of cake. Next one. Now, the only difference down in section B is that you have the word of. What do we know about of? It's a multiplication, right? So all of these then would be just multiplying, okay? So just kind of getting used to how we would maybe see it in a story problem, okay? Or in one of the practical application problems. So multiplication of fractions, how do we feel about that? Feel okay about it? Putting things in lowest terms, that kind of thing?
Why does it come from a smaller number? This way.
Because you want to know of it how much it is. Because you're taking a fraction times a fraction. Okay?
Oh,
So when you do that, you're taking decimal numbers, if you would. Okay? And that's why they become smaller, because they go in that direction.
no, like 0.5 times 0.25 is 0.125.
Correct. Because you're saying,
What am I asking?
and that's where the words come into place. Like half, like 1/4 of a half of this is how much.
Okay, so
That's what it would be. That's why the word of gets in there, and it's a multiplication of it. You multiply it times it to get that number.
okay.
All right. Let's go to the division of fractions. That starts on page 88. Okay? Now the division of fractions, there's just one extra step here that we have to do, and then it becomes a multiplication. Okay? You may remember it from the past. So, okay, I'm gonna go down here. I'm gonna go down and we're gonna talk about the concept of a reciprocal. Okay, and that's our first step when we do division problems. The reciprocal of a fraction is going to be something that all we do is we switch it. So if we have a fraction of 5/6, the reciprocal is going to be, we're going to flip it, 6/5. Okay? The reciprocal of 1/4 is going to be 4/1. It's that simple. Okay? So just the concept of reciprocal is what we need before we start dividing. So in example, I'm going to do example 4 first, and then we'll go back to example 3. In example 4 here, we want to divide 2/5 divided by 4/3. Okay? The first step that we do here is we're going to do the reciprocal of the second number that we have in the string. Okay? The reciprocal of 4/3 is what? 3/4 or 3/4, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, 2/5, and then we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of the second number. Okay? So a division we convert to a multiplication by taking the reciprocal of that second number. It cannot become a multiplication until we do the reciprocal. Okay?
So
Yes?
that would be the first number?
You could do the first number. You'll most often see it in this instant. Okay?
So it doesn't matter.
Or you can always cross and multiply.
It's the same thing.
It ends up being a similar thing, but We're going to do I like this reciprocal because then it's the same for everything that we do. So you'll notice here, once we do the reciprocal, we can multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom. Okay? So a division problem, we need to switch over into a multiplication problem by doing the reciprocal of the second factor. So now we're going to take 2 times 3 is 6, divided by 2 times, or over 2, or 5 times 4 is 20. Okay? Now this is not in lowest terms. We can divide both numbers by 2 to get 3/5. Now you'll notice they did some of the canceling inside in the math, but you get the same answer. Okay? Let's go and do example number 3, the process. So here we want to divide 5 divided by 1/2. Okay? Now 5 is a whole number. We want to first get that whole number in its fractional form. So we're going to say 5 over 1 divided by 1 over 2. Okay? Now it looks more like what we're used to seeing. So now we have a division. We have 5 over 1 divided by 1 over 2, or 1/2. We're going to convert this into a multiplication problem by taking the reciprocal of the second factor. So we're going to leave the 5 over 1. Then we're going to switch this to a multiplication times the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2 over 1. Oh, 2 over 1. I'm jumping ahead. I'm thinking of 10. Okay? Now we do our multiplication. We multiply across the top and we get the number 10. We multiply across the bottom, we get the number 1. So our answer is 10, the whole number, right? Okay? It kind of makes sense. When we divide 5 in half, or when we divide 5 by half of each one of its parts, we're going to get 10 parts, aren't we?
Yep.
Yeah. So sometimes you want to think of these, you want to get your answer and be like, does that make sense? And it does. It actually does. Okay, let's do example number 5. Okay. Here you'll notice that there's a mixed number in here. So here we have 5/8 divided by 3 3/4. Okay, guess what we're going to do with that 3 3/4? We're going to put it into go ahead, make it an improper fraction first. So we're going to do 5/8 divided by, let's put this in an improper fraction. So we're going to take 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15/4. Everybody agree? Okay. Now that we have it in this form, we're now going to turn it into a multiplication problem. Okay. We're going to say, we're going to keep the 5/8, but we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of 15/4, so it's going to be 4 over 15. Okay? Now we're going to multiply across the top. We're going to get 20 on top. We're going to multiply across the bottom. What is 8 times, is it 120? Okay. 8 times 15 is 120. Well, it looks like we're not in lowest terms yet, right? So, whoopsie, I went out. There we go. I have to move this around. It kind of went to sleep on me. So now I need to get this in lowest terms. The first thing I'm going to do here is I know 10 can go in. So these zeros can cancel. Remember that from some of your math classes, putting in lowest terms? So I can say now 2 over 12, right? So 2 goes into both of them, right? So it's going to be 1/6 is the final lowest term answer. Let's check to see how we did. Sure enough, 1/6. It's good business. Up on the top of page 91, go ahead and do 7/8 divided by 3 seconds. Kind of set it up yourself and then peek at the answer. It is below, okay? And we'll kind of go through this together in just a second after you've had a chance to attempt this.
You have to actually go like the second one. You can't go with the first one.
Okay.
Like, you look at when you actually do it the other way around.
Okay.
The first one you get the opposite we want.
Do you? So here, we're going to turn this into a multiplication, right? So we're going to do 7/8, leave the 7/8, times the reciprocal of 3 over 2 is going to be 2 over 3, right? Now we can multiply across the top, 14 over, multiply across the bottom, 24. Not in lowest terms yet, so we're going to divide the top and the bottom by 2, right? So divide by 2, and we're going to get 7/12. Okay?
At first, I thought you do the first one, it doesn't really make sense which one.
Oh.
But when you do the first one, you get 12 over 7.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
it gets the other one, yeah.
So what happens when you get 3 in a row?
Ooh, that's tricky. You do the first two first, because it's order of operations. You do the first two first,
So
and
you-
then, so you first do your
Yeah, the
division
last two
first, and then you do that one times the, or divided or multiplied
Oh,
by the
right.
second one. So it becomes order of operations. So the question was, let's say,
Okay.
for instance, hypothetically, we've got 1/4 divided by 2/3 divided by 1/5. Okay? Which one do we do first then? Well, order of operations. Here's a division, right? We first do the first two starting left to right. Okay? We find that number, and then once we get that fraction, then we're going to divide by the 1/5 and get that one. Okay? So yeah, when we have a string like that, then we revert back to order of operations. Good question. Okay? All right. Let's do a couple more practices. On page 93 at the bottom, exercises 2-3. Here's division of fractions. Let's do together numbers 1, 3, and 5, just to make sure we've got this process before moving on. Okay? So we're going to do 1, 3, and 5 together.
Okay, it has to be the second one because the number is being divided by that number.
Right, right.
Okay.
5, 6 divided by 1/2. So I'm just writing out my 1, 3, and 5. 5/12 divided by 4/3. And number 5, 6/16 divided by 3/4. I'm not fighting my book here underneath. So for number 1, we want to take 5, 6 and divide it by 1/2. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a multiplication problem. All right? So I just kind of put these arrows over here, and I'm going to rewrite out 5/6, and I'm going to multiply it by the reciprocal of the second number. So 2 over 1. Now it becomes that multiplication problem. So 5 times 2 is 10 on the top, divided by 6 times 1 on the bottom, which is going to be 6. Need to put this in lowest terms, right? Looks like 2 can go into each one of them. So this is going to equal 10 divided by 2 is 5. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Excuse me. So now it's your choice. At this point, I would be okay. Unless the problem says otherwise, I would call this lowest terms. It's just an improper fraction. Okay? If you want to put it into its mixed number, you could, but I would accept answers like this, just so that you know. Okay?